In this tutorial, we're going to create the texture map for the barrel asset that is in the Roswell Garage model. And I'm going to start out with the barrel before texture. So I'll select the barrel asset, and in the layer window, I'm going to click on where it says barrel skin, it down in the sub layers. Once I've double clicked, I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to choose a blue from my swatch window. If you choose to depart and change the color of this, you're welcome to. You don't have to follow this religiously. There'll be two other components that I'll ask you to add to the barrel, and that will be a bump map and a transparency map, and I'll walk you through that as well. So once I've got the blue I want on my blank layer, I'll hit Option Delete. And in my layer window now, I'm going to start to add some of those shadowy details that appear on the original, where the banding is on the barrel. So once again, I'll go to my layer window, and I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to get my rectangle marquee. And this can be done all at one time, or I can do these strips individually. You'll start to recognize with UV maps the clusters of lines that you see. In this case, it's horizontal, and how they relate to the actual rings of metal on the barrel itself. So I know that if I kind of select across like so, I can add the shadow when I want. I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to add all the others at one time. And as I said, you can do these one at a time if you wish. But I'm going to go ahead and just bump these all through at once. Now, I'm going to get a darker value of the blue I'm using for the barrel itself, and I'm going to get a soft edge brush. With a soft edge brush, I'll leave the opacity 100% because it's on its own layer. I can always drop the opacity. The brush is about 150 pixels. Now, if I were to paint here, it would paint on the inside, but I want the shadows on the outside of this selection so that they fall on the outsides of these pronounced metal rims. So either I'll go to Select Inverse or hit Command-Shift-I. And now I'm going to hold the Shift key and drag across my document like so. And I'm going to do that for each of these selected areas. You'll notice that I'm not concerned about going outside the parameters of the UV map. Nothing can appear outside. That's actually a better idea to go outside of it so that you don't have any of the black background showing up on your geometry. If we were to take a look at that model now, we can see it's starting to show up right where I'd like it to be. I'm just going to turn off the UV map for a second and save and update to see what we have. So you can see how easy it is to apply lighting inside the 3D environment. Now I've also gone and I've gotten the atomic waste icon to add to my model. Now again, you don't have to follow this religiously. As long as you're putting the values in on that, you're fine with what you may come up with. I think I'll scale that logo down a bit. And now that I have the basic texture that I want, I'm going to be adding some rust. We're going to be adding a bump map to make that rust pop a little bit, and then we'll put an opening in this barrel as well, and we'll deal with the whole idea of transparent areas on a 3D surface. Now we're going to add the rust to our barrel. I'm going to put a new layer in, and I'm going to go to my swatch window, and I usually like to grab some form of a sepia, one of those reddish browns. So I'll go ahead and click on one. And it's pretty easy to do using the dissolve brush. So I'm going to get my dissolve brush up at the top. I'll hit B to get my brush, and I'll change that to dissolve. And I usually start off with a soft edge brush. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger. I'll bump it to about 200, 250. And what I'll often do is drop the opacity down maybe to about 60%. And you'll see why in a moment. And I'm going to go in and start to paint where I might want rust on my barrel. Now again, this is very subjective, so whatever your take on this is fine as long as you follow the process. I'm going to now go to the layer with that rust color, and I'm going to go to the layer style. So I'll go to FX, and I'm first going to put bevel and emboss on. I'm going to choose an inner bevel, and I'm going to choose the technique of chisel soft. I'm going to make the depth about 350, 375, and I'm going to make the size 3, and I'm going to click OK. Now there's one other thing I might do to make the rest a little bit more what I have in mind. I'm going to put an outer glow on this as well. So I'm going to go back to the FX. Now you can get the FX by going to the bottom of the menu and choosing through there, or you can double click anywhere on the flat gray of the layer area. And when you do so, you'll see the layer styles come up again. So on the layer styles, I'm going to choose the outer glow. So I'll click on outer glow, and I'm going to choose the blend mode multiply, and I probably will pick a black for this. And then I'm going to back the spread off to 0, and I'm going to make the size 1. Now, it might be a little dark, so I think I'll drop the opacity from 100% maybe to about 75, 70. You can see now it has a little bit more of a pronounced quality. Now I'm going to look for a blend mode so that I'm not covering up my logo for the nuclear waste all that much. So in my layer window, I'll select that layer, I'll hit V, hold down the Shift key, and I'll hit plus on the keyboard, and I'll go through my blend modes to see if there's something that suits my needs here. I think I'm going to go with U, and save that. And next we're going to develop the bump map that will relate to that texture we're seeing. It looks pretty good now, but with a bump texture put into our texture node, we'll be able to make that a little bit more believable. Now it's easy to add a bump texture that will reflect what we've already done with our pattern on our barrel. I'm going to go to image duplicate, and I'm going to put an adjustment layer above everything, and I'm going to use black and white. And you'll see that it turns into these values of gray. Now, it's too gray, I want more contrast. So once again, I'll go down to my I'll go down to my adjustment layers, click on that black and white cookie, and now I'm going to choose levels. And this is where it gets subjective once again. But you'll see that the white values are flatlined here. So I'm going to hold the Option key and drag on the light value all the way over till I start to see some brighter content. At this point, we would start to make some adjustments and start to play with the values of the grayscale image we've just created. I'm going to leave it like that for now. This is something that you would go back in and change if you needed to, but we're going to introduce it in this state so you can see how this works. So I'm going to save this file as my barrel skin bump, and I'm going to choose the JPEG format, and I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now we're going to introduce that JPEG bump we just created. In order to do so, I'm going to go to Window at the top of the user interface. I'm going to choose 3D, and once again I'll go to Window, and I'm going to choose Properties. Now I'm going to put these windows side by side. Now in the 3D window, you'll want to select the revolved surface. And then in the Properties window, you'll want to click on this little icon that almost looks like a cell phone. It represents the texture. Once I've selected that, once again in the 3D window, I'll click on the same icon that appears just to the left of the light bulb. And when I do so, it shows me the texture node. You'll see the little sphere in the upper right-hand corner of the Properties window with the texture we've applied to it. Now, as we go down the list of choices here, you'll see the word bump. At the far right hand side of that bump slider bar, there is a little styles folder icon. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to choose load texture. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'll click on that bump texture I just created and I'll hit open. Now immediately you'll see a change in your model. You'll see how pitted it looks. We can also increase or decrease that with that slider bar now, so the further I drag it to the right, the more pronounced it is. Again, this is very subjective, and however you choose to apply that is up to you, as long as that you have created that bump map. Now the next thing we're going to do with another black and white texture, we're going to create a transparent or a hole inside this barrel. We're going to start out by opening the barrel skin again to create the hole in the barrel. So I'll double click on it in sublayer and I'm going to duplicate it again. And I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to get my lasso tool. With my cowboy lasso tool, I'm just going to go in and draw a shape where I think I would like a hole in this barrel. Once again, it's up to you how you want this to work out. I'll go ahead and click and drag kind of a general shape here. Maybe a couple of them. I'm going to D on the keyboard for my defaults. I'm going to fill those spots with solid black by hitting Option Delete. I'm now going to go to Select Inverse, and I'm going to fill the rest of this layer with white. Wherever there's white, the geometry will remain fully opaque. Wherever it is black or a value of gray, there'll be translucence. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to save this as a JPEG as well. I'll call it barrel skin hole. The format is JPG. I'll click OK. And I'm going to close it out, and I won't save the PSD version of this. Now I'm closing out the original texture map. And once again, I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to choose 3D, and then I'm going to choose Properties. And if you don't see the texture node come up immediately, you probably will because we just put the bump map in, but you can always reselect that. So let's say I had to do that over again. I'm clicking on where it says Revolve Surface. And then in the Properties window, I'm selecting that little icon in the far left corner. And then I'm going to select in the 3D window, the one to the left of the little light bulb. And there's my texture node. Now down below bump, you'll see opacity. I'm going to go to the far right hand side of that slider bar to that little folder icon. I'll click on it and choose load texture. I'll now go out and I'll choose my barrel skin hole.jpg and I'll click on open. And now if I were to get my move tool and revolve my geometry, you can see now it's got a hole where I had placed the black spot on my JPEG file. And those are the two components you'll need to add to whatever take you have on that barrel, in addition to the rust, of course. So we've got rust, whatever color, whatever graphics you choose. Then you'll want to add the bump map as well as a hole in your barrel. And that concludes this tutorial.